Good evening, everyone. This week's parsha is Parshas Lecha, Tavshin Pei Vav, and we will begin in the middle of the parsha, Perek Tes Zayin, chapter 16, Pasuk Aleph, verse 1. And we're going to be discussing the part of the parsha that talks about how Sarai, Avram's wife, at this point in the parsha, the names are still Avram and Sarai, and Sarai has a maidservant named Hagar, an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. The Medrash tells us Hagar was actually the daughter of Paro, who Paro gave as a maidservant, as a slave, to Sarai after the whole incident that when he took Sarai as a wife. And Sarai tells Avram to marry Hagar so that they'll have a child, because she hasn't a child yet. And Sarai says, perhaps through that I will also be built up. I'll also merit to have a child. Abraham listens. Avram takes Hagar as a wife. She becomes pregnant right away. She starts dealing with her mistress less respectful than before because of the fact that she had become pregnant and Sarai had not. Sarai becomes upset with Avram about what's going on. Avram says, she's your slave. Do with her as you see fit. The Torah says that Sarai afflicted her and she ran away. And then the Torah tells us how an angel found her in the desert and spoke to her about going back. Eventually she went back. She had a child with Avram, and they called him Ishmael. So that's just a quick summary of what this part of the parsha talks about. But what I want to do is I want to go through the parsha according to the way the commentary of the Malbim explains things, and also the commentary of the Ber Yosef, to get a little more deeper understanding of what's going on. So let's begin again. Tes Zayin Aleph, chapter 16, verse 1. The Sarai Eshes Avram lo yoldaloi. Sarai, the wife of Avram, had not yet given birth to him a child. V'la shivcha mitzris v'shma Hagar, and to her, meaning Sarai had an Egyptian maidservant, a slave, and her name was Hagar. Okay, now, the Malbim points out that the Torah tells us Sarai Eshes Avram. Sarai, the wife of Avram. Now we know Sarai is the wife of Avram. We know that already from before. There's going to be another part of the parsha where, again, it is repeated, and Sarai Eshes Avram did, etc. Why is it so important to be stressing here that Sarai is the wife of Avram? And the Malbim explains with a very deep explanation regarding Avram's marriage to Hagar. And that is that Sarai clearly is meant to be Avram's wife, from whom eventually she will give birth to a child from him. That's Yitzchak. That's the child that is meant to be the progeny of Avram. That child is supposed to come from Sarai. But, and this is a concept mentioned in more than one place, is that in order for Abraham to be able to father a holy child like Yitzchak, Avram has to basically purge himself of certain spiritual impurities that he has within him. Don't forget Avram's background. His parents, his father was an idolater, right? He used to make idols, famous Medrash. Avram himself had to come to discover the belief in one Hashem. And because of Avram's background, there was a certain spiritual impurity that was within him. And if he was going to have the child that would be the next of the patriarchs of the Jewish people, and again, that meant a child of the highest levels of sanctity and purity, Abraham had to basically be purged of his spiritual impurity. And the way that would happen would be by having a child not from Sarai, who would not be as holy as Yitzchak, actually would be a very unholy person, or at least his spiritual makeup was clearly not a very holy one, as we know the life of Yishmael was. And that was actually meant to purge Abraham of his spiritual impurities within him. It had to come out of him. And the way it would come out of him would be by having a child. And that child would basically, contain those spiritual impurities. That's how it would come out of Avraham. Yishmael was not, eventually we know Yishmael did tshuva at the end of his life. But until then, Yishmael was not a very righteous person at all, as next week's parsha depicts. And he was not a righteous child because of the kind of makeup that he had within him. Not to say that he couldn't control himself, but he clearly was made up of a not of a very pure disposition.
But this idea came before he was born.
Yes. Yishmael, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this idea is that in order for Abraham to eventually have a child like Yitzchak, that can only happen after Abraham is purged of the spiritual impurity that he still has within him from his background, and that would happen by producing a child that basically that impurities went into.
But Torah tells us this is like the idea from Sarah.
One second. Now, the Malbim is giving a principle that's telling us the real background here. The real background here is that this is what needs to happen. As a matter of fact, it didn't end with Avraham, because Yitzchak had a son, Esav. And the commentaries say that Esav was the finalization of that purging. It's interesting. Esav was born together with Yaakov, right? So even when Yitzchak was born, Avraham was purged through Esav, but not completely. Yitzchak had something within him, and that came out in Esav. So it came out in Esav, and Yaakov was born, the holy Yaakov, the Bechir Shabbat, considered the greatest of the three patriarchs. And so that's what's supposed to happen here. That's what needs to happen here. That's not going to happen through Sarai, because Sarai was a holy woman. Her background was not a great background either, but she was a holy woman. She was the one that was meant to produce the holy child with Yitzchak, but she wasn't going to be the one by which the unholy child is going to be born. But the one that could work through would be Hagar, because Hagar herself was Egyptian. She was not from the same stock. She was not from the same stock at all of Abraham and Yitzchak, of Abraham and Sarai. She was a shivcha. She was a maidservant, which again puts out a certain, not as a holy level, as a person who's free. And therefore, she would be the one that it made sense to have this child to purge Abraham of that impurity. Again, this is very esoteric in concept, but this is what the Malbim says. He's not the only one who says it. All right. So now, therefore, the Torah says, "V'Sarai Eishes Avraham lo yoldaloi." Sarai, the wife of Avraham, meaning the one who's meant to be Avraham's wife, the one who's meant to be the mother of the Jewish people, she had not yet given birth. It was in time, because Yishmael had to first come out. There had to be Yishmael. There had to be that purging of the impurity from Avraham. But she had a maidservant named Hagar, who could be the one to do that. Now, you just brought up, but Sarai, when she approaches Avraham, right, she doesn't say any of this.
No.
She doesn't say any of this. So according to the Malbim, it would seem that Sarai was not aware of this idea. Her idea was that she had not yet given birth, and she knew that Hashem told Avraham that Avraham is going to have a child, and she hasn't given birth yet. So she's already, kind of considering that maybe it's not going to be her. Maybe it's going to be somebody else. Maybe it's going to be not going to be her because she's going to die and Avram will marry somebody else. Or maybe Avram will take another wife and it'll be the other wife that she'll have that the child will be born from. But she already saw herself at this point of time. It was already late. They were both old. And she didn't have any children. So therefore, she's kind of trying to step into the situation, according to this. And she says to Avram, look, marry my maidservant. The maidservant has a child. What's the status of that child? If a slave woman has a child, what status does that child have? That child is a slave of the same master as the mother. So if you marry Hagar, and she'll still remain my maidservant, She'll still remain a slave to me. So now the child that'll be born will be considered mine, not my biological child, but it'll be my child in the sense that it's now my servant. And in that way, she'll have some kind of a connection to the child born from Avram. Even if she's not the mother, she'll have some kind of a connection to it. It'll be her servant. She'll raise it. So this was her idea in order for her to be able to have a connection here to this child. The Gam Chashran also, she thought another idea, which is if she actually allows her husband to have a child from someone else, that'll be a merit for her to be able to have her own child. Okay, so the pasuk says, this is pasuk. So pasuk Beis reads, "Vatamar Sarai el Avram." Sarai said to Avram, "Nino atzrani Hashem miledes. Behold, now God has held me back from giving birth. Bono shivchasi, come now to my maidservant. Ulai yibaneh mimena, perhaps I will build up from her." Vayishma Avram l'kol Sarai. Avram listened to the voice of Sarai. The Malbim says that a phrase of listening to the voice of someone means that you find favor in what they're saying. Meaning, he listened to her. He heard her. He heard what she was saying. He basically agreed to it, and that's what it means. He listened to the voice of Sarai. To him, Sarai was making a reasonable suggestion, and he went with it. So now, the next pasuk, Gimel 3. Vatikach Sarai eshes Avram es Hagar hamitzvah shivchasa, and Sarai, the wife of Avram, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maidservant. Miketz Eser Shanim l'sheves Avram beretz Canaan, 10 years after Avram had been living in the land of Canaan. Vatitein oisa la Avram isha loy isha, and she gave her to Avram, her husband, to him as a wife. Now, the Malbim says like this. The Malbim says, here again, we stress Sarai, the wife of Avram, Hagar, her maidservant. The Malbim explains what the Torah is saying is like this. She didn't free Hagar. It's not like when she gave Abraham Hagar as a wife. It's not like she freed Hagar from being her maidservant, and now she became a second wife to Avram. She was a second wife to Avram, but she was still the maidservant of Sarai. There was no diminishment in her status as a wife. She was really the only real wife, and the other, and Hagar was more like a secondary wife of sorts because she was still the servant of Sarai.
But what is wife? What is called wife? Free man can have wife from slave.
So according to Torah law, no, but this is before the Torah.
Okay.
But the point is also to bring out that she is still a maidservant. She is not a second wife. And that makes a difference for the rest of the story. Okay? Now, what happened next is, Pasuk Daled, Vayavayel Hagar Vatar. So he came to Hagar. Hagar became pregnant. Vateriki Harasa. Hagar saw she became pregnant. Vateik al Gaverta Beineha. And her mistress became light in her eyes. She sees that Sarai has not become pregnant. She became pregnant immediately, and that caused her to consider that caused her to consider to lower her esteem of Sarai. Now, so what happens next? Vatamar Sarai el Avram. This is pasuk A, verse A. Sarai says to Avram, "Chamasiya Lecha, my injustice is upon you. I gave you my maidservant. She saw that she became pregnant. And I became lighter in her eyes. Hashem should judge between me and between you." All right. So Sarai says to Avram, the injustice being done to me by her disrespect to me is upon you. I gave you her as a wife. She became pregnant. Now I have become lighter, lesser in her eyes. Hashem should judge between me and you. Now, Avram could have said to Sarai, wait a minute, this wasn't my idea. Like, yeah. What are you coming to me for? It wasn't my idea. You're the one who did it. You're the one who suggested this. So I'm not the one who brought this on. So what exactly is the complaint against me? So the Sephorinu says the complaint was that she was saying to him, look, you see what's happening, right? She is your wife of sorts. You see what's happening. You should be doing something. You should be getting involved. So what does he respond? He responds to Tamar Sarai. So Vayomer Avram el Sarai. Avram says to Sarai, Hinei shevchaseich b'yadeich. Behold, your maidservant is in your hand. Asila toy beinayach. Do to her what you see fit. Meaning, if she is acting disrespectful, do what you see fit to make her, to put her back and to put her in line. Vataneh Sarai afflicted her. Vatirach mipaneh. Because of that, she ran away from her. Okay, so now, the Malbim interestingly explains that Sarai's complaint to Avram was when she says Chamasi Alecha. You know, Chamasi, the word chamas can also mean to steal. So Chamasi Alecha, what's been stolen from me is upon you. The Malbim explains that Sarai thought that if Hagar is acting disrespectful because she became the wife of Abraham, you know why she's acting that way? Because Abraham freed her. Because Abraham told her, you're free, you're not a maidservant anymore. And to that, Sarai says to him, you can't do that. She's my maidservant. Parah gave her to me. You can't just free her if she's mine. So Chamasi Alecha, the injustice or what's been stolen from me, it's upon you. Because she basically thought that he had freed her. And he can't do that. And that's Yishbet Hashem, B'nei B'necha, Hashem would judge between me and between you. Because what you're doing is not right here. Because she assumed that's why Hagar acted the way she did. And Avram says, no, I didn't free her. She's your shivcha, she's your maidservant, of course. I didn't do anything here, so you do what you feel fit. And then it says she afflicted her. So let me ask you a question. How do you think she afflicted her? How do you think she did it? Like when you see this, she afflicted her. Like what comes to your mind?
What's being afflicted to?
Cause her pain. Cause her suffering. What do you think she did? She took a whip. She took a stick. She patched her. What'd she do?
Probably not.
So what does it mean she afflicted her? So I'm going to go now. I'm going to answer that question, sharing with you a different thought. Another thought, rather. So the commentator Ber Yosef, he wants to suggest this whole the whole story going on here between Hagar and Sarai, and Sarai's complaint, and Hagar disrespecting her, and Abram telling her to do what you see fit, and she afflicted her, is actually based on a very, very interesting medrash. Basically, we know that Abraham brought many people to belief in Hashem, right? And Rashi brings down Abraham Megayer as Hanashim. Abraham converted the men. The Sarai Megayeres as Hanashim. Sarai converted the women. Converted means bringing them to the belief in Hashem. So Abraham dealt with the men. Sarai dealt with the women. And Abraham and Sarai were people held in very, very high esteem. They were very prestigious people. And the Medrash says like this. The Medrash says that, Medrash says, Matronios means noble women, women of high stature. They would come to visit Sarai. She was a prestigious person. She was known as a very righteous person, as a prestigious person, and noble women, great women, important women would come to her.
This is from Hana or on other places?
This is at least now in the end of Canaan. It's at least now. It could happen before also, but at least in Canaan, this is happening. Right now, it's happening in Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so they would come. It says the noble woman would come to Sarah to greet her. And what would Sarah say? Sarah would say to them, go and greet, go say hello to Hagar. Why? Because Hagar really, she called her, the Medrash says, go ask in the welfare of the aluva, of the embarrassed one, of the shamed one. Hagar, as I said before, according to the Medrash, Hagar was a princess. She was an Egyptian princess. and her father gave her as a slave, as a maidservant to Sarai. So, not the most, comfortable situation. You used to be a princess and now you're a maidservant. So Sarai, being very considerate, would tell these people who came to greet her, go say hello to her. Go say hello to Hagar. Make her feel good. Okay, so here's the medrash. They would go to Hagar to greet her, and what would Hagar say to them? Sarai, my boss, she's not as righteous as you think. What she looks like on the outside, she's not really on the inside. You know why? Because, look, she was married so many years and had become pregnant. I became pregnant right away. So, she must not be so righteous. And actually, she's not necessarily, there must be, everybody, you're looking at her as this righteous person. She's such a special righteous person. Well, look at the difference between me and her. Okay? It was because of that, that she was talking to these noble women like that. Therefore, this is what happened. This is what Hagar would do. So according to the Medrash, Hagar holding Sarai in lower esteem was actually, as we say, bad mouthing her. She was actually talking about her to other people, saying, "Look, she must not be so righteous." Says the Ber Yosef, if this is what Hagar says to these noble women, what Hagar is doing is she's undermining what Sarai is trying to accomplish. Sarai is trying to accomplish to bring the women to the belief in Hashem. And clearly these noble women have a lot of influence. And if she is able to influence them, she can influence others. But if these important women are being told, well, she's really not so righteous, then that's going to undermine what Sarai is trying to accomplish. That's Sarai's problem, says the Ber Yosef. It's not just a question of, there's nothing wrong with learning that this is a maidservant and this is her mistress and she should be showing her respect. But the Ber Yosef is saying, based on the Medrash, we could say there's a lot more than that going on. There's a whole undermining of what Sarai is trying to accomplish. So, after speaking so the Ber Yosef wants to suggest that when she goes to Avram and she says, Chamasi Lecha, what's being taken away from me is upon you. She's saying, my ability to influence the women to believe in Hashem has been taken away from me, and you need to do something about that. You need to judge. This is Hashem should judge between me and you. This is a matter of honor to Hashem. So Avram says, look, do what you see fit. Do what you see fit to do what? To stop her from undermining you. So says the Ber Yosef, when the Torah says she afflicted her, you know what she did? She changed her job. If Sarai was able to tell the noble women, go say hello to Hagar, that means Hagar was working in her house, right? She had the privilege of being a maidservant in the house of Sarai. And then Sarai changed her job out to the field. She had a cushy job, and now she had a much harder job. So afflicting her meant that the kind of situation the more comfortable situation she was used to before, she now had a very difficult and uncomfortable situation. And Sarai put her there because now she would not have that interaction with the noble women, because they wouldn't go out to the field where the workers were, and there wouldn't be any of this bad talking about her, bad mouthing her. But that was the affliction that caused her to run away. So it's not like she beat her, and it's not like she whipped her, or she somehow or another abused her. That's not what happened. The point was that she changed Hagar's work, and it became very difficult work, which Sarai considered that afflicting, suffering, and she ran away. So the Ber Yosef adds a very interesting dimension here to this whole discussion regarding what was going on here, what Sarai was trying to deal with. Okay, so now next thing is, so she runs away, and the angel goes out to find her. So this is Pasuk Zayin. It says the angel found her by a spring of water, and then Pasuk Ches Vayomar, and he said, Hagar, maidservant of Sarai, where are you going? Where are you coming from, and where are you going? He didn't know. He's an angel, doesn't he know? Didn't know?
No.
So says the Malbim, he knew, but he's trying to tell her, where are you coming from? Do you know you're coming from the house of Avram and Sarah? That's a holy place. And where are you going? Where do you think she was running to? She was running away. Did she have a destination? The answer is yes. She was going back to Egypt. That's where she came from. So he's saying to her, first of all, he's calling her Shivcha Sarai. You have to realize you're a maidservant. You are. But at the same time, realize where are you coming from? The holy house of Avram and Sarah. And where are you going to? To lowly, depraved, spiritually depraved Mitzrayim? Like he's trying to tell her, like, look what you're giving up.
Why Hagar should understand?
So how understand what? An angel?
No, I understand is different between to be princess and Mitzrayim.
Because she had experience of both. She was in Avram's house.
And she feels this is more.
Of course, she would understand that Avram and Sarah's house was a holy place, and she knew the background she was coming from, so she understood the difference. Okay. So the Malach says, what are you doing? What's her answer? I'm running away from Sarai. Basically, no, not for me. If I'm going to be afflicted, I'm not going to be there, which is an important lesson. That how sometimes a person will give up their spiritual riches they could have because it's too difficult. So then the Malach says then it says 3 times the Malach spoke to her. And the question is, why does it have to say the Malach said this, and the Malach said this, and the Malach said this? So the Malach explains the Malach was now going to try to work with her on 3 different levels to get her to go back. The first one he says to her is, this is Pasuk Tes, Vayomer la Malach Hashem, verse 9, and the angel of God said to her, Shui al gevertech v'isani tachas yadeha. Return to your mistress and be afflicted under her hand. That was an argument to say, look, you're a slave, you're a maidservant, running away is not correct. That's the way it was in those days. There was slavery, and she was owned by Sarai, and he was trying to tell her, look, it's not right for you to run away. Okay? But he saw that's not working. So then it says again, the angel said to her, another way of trying to get her back. The first getting her back was, it's the right thing. Next, I will increase your children, and they will not be able to be counted. He's basically saying to her, I got it. The next thing was a promise. You go back, you're going to become a great nation. Going back to Avram, you realize we'll create for you a future. You'll be the mother of a great nation. Didn't work. Still didn't work. Whoa. The third time, the angel says to her, you're going to become pregnant, you're going to have a child, you'll call him Yishmael, for Hashem has heard your affliction. Says the Malbim, that means, okay, I'm promising you the affliction will stop. You're going to go back to Sarai, she's going to stop. I'll make sure. Hashem says, I will make sure that Sarai will stop.
Why he not started with the last one?
He's going in order.
No, but first, the reasons he ran because infliction.
Right.
He said, no infliction, go.
Because he wanted her to accept better reasons to go back. Go back. And at the end, he says, you're going to go back, you'll have a child, Yishmael, you call him Yishmael because Hashem has heard your affliction. Okay. No. But then he says to her, V'karasha Shema Yishmael, right? And then he says, V'ya pera adam v'yad kol ba. He's going to be a wild man. His hands are on everyone. Everyone's hands on him. Great news, right? You're going to have a son. He's going to be a wild man. Says the Malbim, it wasn't meant to be news. It was meant to say, look, at the end of the day, you're only going back for this reason. Know that the child you will have is going to be a wild person. If you would have gone back for better reasons, the child you would have had would have maybe have been on a better level. But now that you're only going back because of this affliction issue, know that the child you're going to have from Abraham is going to be a wild man. He's not going to be the child that'll give you a lot of nachas and give you a lot of pleasure. So and at the end she went back. Why? Because once she had the promise, she's not going to be afflicted anymore. She went back. And she had Abraham, and she had a child. She called the child Yishmael, and Yishmael has his whole story. Yishmael, at the end of his life, we know did tshuva, but until then, he was quite a wild and not righteous person. But this is how the Malbim explains the entire episode, what was going on. And the last thing I mentioned from the Malbim is the discussion with the Malach and her, what was going on there. And it was actually trying to use 3 arguments to persuade her, and it was only the third one that eventually worked. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening.